It's Podraza. I'm not making any of this up. It's Pat. There's more on the subject of love concerning prior. This is rough for me. I've got to take some vitamins. There was a very pretty young one, blonde hair, that he was training in that department, trying to keep his self-esteem, which I suffered due to the lack of it. We're going back to an elevator scene on that. That was rough. Because she'd smile at me, he faced me with her training hall, and it killed me. Because she was younger, beautiful, I didn't feel I looked that pretty. And I was older. I was in my 30s going toward my 40s, upper, I think, 20s. Well, it's life. When you bring them into a department, you train them. So that was number two, was rough. She was fired. She faced me, and I said, what the heck is she facing me for? I didn't know what to do. I smiled at her and said nothing, because that was rough. He hired another one, a bitch and a half. I sat down at the table worrying about him. I hadn't seen him in a while. She was facing a bald-head guy that was a help to him. He sits down at my table and talks to me. And then I was told Pryor took her to a party. And, of course, he wasn't in the lunchroom for a while. And I thought, gee, maybe he's building up, trying to build a solid reputation of getting along and not hollering. And I understood, well, one could be hollering at that stature and going out a door, fighting for his life. I kept having gut levels on it, getting up from the chair and checking his office. Now we're going to go to that. That hurt. Why, she was taken to a party. I got movies thereafter, but I wouldn't have been to those parties anyway if they were set up for hooking or any arranging like that, or drug parties or anything like that. I didn't know what was going on. I hated that female, but apparently she did his work all right. If she survived with her, I didn't say anything. She was a bitch. Now, I don't know who he married. Then we've got a curly hair one that showed up when I had gut levels on him. She always faced me. About as thin as I, perhaps slightly heavier, as well as I. I think it was about a toss-up on looks on that one. She, this is giving you facts, dressed more countrified in one sense. I was more style-oriented at that point. I didn't know whether that was the wife. When I suspected he was being axed again, I called. He never returned the phone call. She arrived on the scene. We faced each other. I walked away because the wife takes precedence. I don't know. I called. Jerry Borgata was there, and I don't know how that impacted either. At another place, it was in, I don't know where it was, Bloomfield. I don't know where that was at. So we've got Tracy, due to Polino arriving, voluptuous, very pretty, well stacked, in her 20s. And I'm told the Polino shows up at a coffee shop, tells me she's a lesbian. Well, I went to her house in Ashmont. I could drink a little then, wine. I sat there. I met her boyfriend. She said sex was kind of hurtful. I met him. I think he was a few years younger. Sized him up, thought he was a gentleman. Wouldn't hurt her. I said, take some more time with him. I think he's a gentleman. Drove out of Ashmont. I was being gotten rid of anyway. And that's how I left her out of that and severed from any lesbians, because there was one in communications industry who I felt fell for me, and I had to sever a friendship. I did not want her hurt anymore. Shirley. I had to end the friendship with her at WHCT. It was almost fanatically wanting to associate, think a lesbian, and I had to not hurt her by severing. I severed from Tracy. But she kept showing up to Polino's office. Ellie was retired. That was a very bad environment for me. It was non-structured. Well, that is later. And we go back into prior. So she's dumped. We got that hellish one arriving. Never saw her full-faced. And that was what I was left with, tortured. I saw him in the hall. I had a fairly good figure. I know that Nato's, I don't know what her name is, up the street. I showed her my figure then. Said, that is what I look like at the bank. Now, she knows I was thin. I twirled in front of him. Now, I twirled. He was getting into the elevator. It gave me the smile I always loved. There was like two parts of him. The part that ignored me, and the part, he never hollered at me, however. And I would go talk to him because of the Mary Lou mess. It didn't make sense to me. Anyway, I trusted him. Anyway. And I twirled. He noticed me, once me over. Opened the elevator to get in. I wanted to save his neck, however. Who was in there? How do you get off an elevator? Who could enter? I would have kissed him quickly in that elevator to let him know if he was still single. I still was attracted to him. I did not get on. It could have hurt him, and it bothered me later. But I wanted him to use his sexual energy to get more mentally acute to fight Joe Alvord. Now, I'd go to his office. I'd look at his desk. It was clean. That to me was a sign of being gotten rid of. Now, I don't know this, but it happened to me continually. And I had to go, I had to leave. I had to leave the establishment and was escorted off by police. I didn't like it on Stanley Street. Said I'd stick my father on him. He's dead. And I'd have to use whatever capacities I could use due to the dead in God if I had to protect myself. I no longer could run anymore. I'm trying to heal these knees, etc. Now, that took place then I showed up at his office. It was a corner office, I forget the floor. Empty again. He faced me, always faced me. Smiled, I perused the desk. Trying to emote to him. That's not good. He stood up at another desk facing some direction toward Marlborough, and the desk was empty. I know he had worked with some of trust stuff, and I felt in his heart he was more trust-linked because Fred Larson seemed to be his friend. Lion Decker was good then, was Fred Larson's secretary. They came out, Fred did, I think, when he said Lion Decker, he's getting married. I still could not say what I wanted to say. I saw him, he was getting down on the yellow, going down, and he smiled. I said, you getting? This is very rough for me. I was tortured in here on it, and I was tortured on that twirling. And I'm going to tell you, I met with Tom Creamer. It took a long time to bring his name back. That was maybe a year ago. My time frames are tough because I work ahead on math and I work on analysis on this. He supposedly went to New York and slept with a hooker, a call girl. And Tom Creamer told me that I would not say a thing against Fire. I knew he had a ferocious temper. Losing his position to go down to that level, have that whole kitchen ruined, and somebody prepared a luncheon for me, and nobody would eat it much, and I couldn't take it home to the kids. I couldn't carry it. Cunningham blew me away on cinnamon in the coffee. and Mary Lou made her brownies. And I'm telling you, it was a bad deal. But anyway, he kept the Hamburg line, the yogurt line, and very little else. He was stripped of that also. I didn't like it. He was being so stripped, I couldn't take it. He might have gone to New York to handle his temper by sleeping out of Connecticut so his boys would not be humiliated. That is how I felt it. I said nothing on that subject, finished my dinner. Tom Creamer was single and older, so he was available to date. I never talked to him again after that. He faced forward. He didn't want to talk to me. I didn't want to talk to him, and I dealt with him, never saying a word. I didn't like it. I was told that he made out with some Oriental in a vehicle. Lee Holgerson was for me. I never said a word. She was more naive, but very good. It was excellent at shorthand. Fisk did say, can I eliminate the shorthand from you? Is that easier? I said, yes. Lee Holgerson took it. Shorthand I was not comfortable with. It took a certain kind of dictator to handle that. They would have known that. I dealt with a Wasserman and Salter. I had to be slower. Sometimes I wrote English. And I did well at Endicott. It took a lot of work. Somebody at Old Battle Axe stood by me on that subject. You have it right there. I can read your shorthand. I was too nervous. She could read it. I could not always read it. Too nervous. I know what anxieties were. Wasn't my strongest suit.